The servants eat in the kitchen, my brother's wife sneered. I calmly made a call. Cancel the $30 million deal. My brother's face turned white as he realized far too late. Who really owned Atlas? The moment I stepped into my brother's mansion, I knew this wasn't just dinner. It was a stage. The chandelier sparkled like it was mocking me, and the guests were dressed to impress, sipping wine older than my apartment lease. I wasn't here for the food. I was here to remind them who really owned Atlas. And when his wife leaned in with that smug little whisper, I didn't flinch. I simply made the call. The invitation had arrived 2 days earlier, tucked inside a gold-trimmed envelope like it was some royal decree. Family dinner, it read with the date and time printed in elegant script. I stared at it for a long time, unsure if I wanted to walk back into that house. The last time I did, I left humiliated. His wife had made sure of that. Her words, her tone, her perfectly rehearsed condescension. But this time felt different. I couldn't explain why, but something inside me said, go. I chose a simple black dress. No designer labels, no flashy jewelry. Just me. I knew she'd judge me the moment I walked in, and I wanted her to. I wanted her to see me exactly as I was. Unapologetic, unpolished, and unafraid. I parked my modest car beside a fleet of luxury vehicles and walked up the steps alone. The butler opened the door and there she was. My brother's wife, standing in the foyer like she owned the place. Technically she didn't, but she liked to pretend. Her eyes scanned me from head to toe, pausing just long enough to register her disappointment. You came, she said, her voice flat and unimpressed. We weren't sure you'd make it. I smiled. I wasn't sure either. She turned and walked away without another word, her heels clicking against the marble floor like a metronome of disdain. Dinner was served in the grand dining room, where everything sparkled except the conversation. My brother tried to keep things light, asking about my work, my travels, my hobbies. His wife barely spoke to me except for the occasional sideways glance and a forced smile. The table was filled with laughter, clinking glasses, and shallow compliments. But beneath it all there was tension, thick, quiet, and waiting. Halfway through the meal she leaned in slightly, her voice low enough for only me to hear. Servants eat in the kitchen. She didn't smile. She didn't blink. She just said it like it was a fact. I didn't react. I didn't let my face change. I simply placed my fork down, dabbed my lips with the napkin and stood up. Excuse me, I said softly. I walked out to the balcony, the cool night air brushing against my skin. The city lights twinkled in the distance, but my mind was focused. I pulled out my phone and dialed. Cancel the $30 million deal, I said. Effective immediately. There was a pause on the other end. Are you sure? I'm sure. I hung up and walked back inside. The moment I entered, I felt the shift. My brother's eyes met mine, wide and searching. He knew. He didn't need an explanation. That deal was his lifeline. He had been counting on it to secure a new expansion, to impress the board, to prove his worth. And I had just pulled the rug out from under him. He opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. His wife looked at him, then at me, her expression slowly changing from confusion to concern. I sat down, picked up my wine glass and took a slow sip. The silence was deafening. I didn't say a word. I didn't need to. The power dynamic had shifted and everyone in that room felt it. My brother tried again. You didn't really. I did, I said, interrupting him gently. His wife leaned forward. What deal? What are you talking about? My brother looked at her, then back at me. You didn't have to do that. I tilted my head. Didn't I? The rest of the dinner passed in awkward fragments. No one touched their dessert. The conversation was scattered, forced. My brother kept glancing at his phone, probably hoping for a miracle. His wife tried to regain control, asking about my apartment, my hobbies, anything to steer the evening back to normal. But it was too late. The damage was done. After dinner, as guests began to leave, my brother followed me to the door. You blindsided me, he said quietly. I turned to him. You let her humiliate me. Again. She didn't mean it like that. She did. And you know it. He looked down, then back up. You could have talked to me. I did. For years. You never listened. He didn't respond. I walked out into the night, the air crisp and clean. As I drove home, memories flooded in. Atlas. The company we built together. The late nights, the early mornings, the sacrifices. He had the spotlight, the praise, the public image. But I had the control. I had the shares. I had the leverage. And tonight I reminded him of that. Not with shouting. Not with drama. Just with one phone call. And a quiet seat at the table. I pulled into my driveway that night, the engine humming softly as I sat in silence. The porch light flickered, casting a warm glow over the cracked pavement. My apartment wasn't much. 2 bedrooms, a tiny kitchen, and a garage that still smelled faintly of solder and burnt coffee. But it was mine. And it was where Atlas was born. Before the suits, the skyscrapers, and the boardrooms, Atlas was just an idea scribbled on a napkin. My brother had walked in one evening, eyes lit up with excitement, waving a sketch of a logo. "We could build something," he said. "Something big." I didn't laugh. I didn't scoff. I simply nodded and opened my laptop. We started in my garage. It was cluttered, dusty, and freezing in winter. We had 1 desk, 2 folding chairs, and a whiteboard that barely held its magnets. He brought the charm, pitching ideas, networking, talking to anyone who'd listen. I brought the plans, writing code, building systems, solving problems he didn't even know existed. We ate instant noodles, shared cheap coffee, and stayed up until dawn chasing a dream no one else believed in. I remember one night the server crashed during a demo. He panicked, pacing the garage like a trapped animal. I stayed calm, fingers flying across the keyboard, rewriting lines of code while he muttered about reputation and investors. I fixed it before sunrise. He called it a miracle. I called it Tuesday. There were no headlines back then. No interviews. No applause. Just long hours, aching wrists, and the quiet hum of machines. I missed birthdays, skipped vacations, and ignored doctor's appointments. My savings dwindled. My health suffered. But I kept going. Because I believed in us. He went to conferences, smiled for cameras, and posted motivational quotes online. I stayed behind, making sure the servers didn't crash and the systems didn't break. I didn't mind. Not at first. I thought we were building something together. I thought we were equals. Then came the funding crisis. We needed capital, fast. Our prototype was solid, but we couldn't scale without help. My brother wanted to pitch to flashy investors, the kind who wore tailored suits and spoke in buzzwords. I disagreed. I reached out to someone quieter. Someone I trusted. His name was Mr. Karam. He didn't care about logos or slogans. He cared about numbers, structure, and control. We met in a quiet cafe away from the noise. I laid out the plan, the projections, the risks. He nodded, asked a few sharp questions, then slid a folder across the table. "You'll hold the controlling shares," he said. "If your brother agrees." I brought the papers home. My brother skimmed them, too busy celebrating the potential windfall to read the fine print. "This is it," he said, clinking his glass against mine. "We're going global." I didn't correct him. I just filed the documents and waited. The gala came 6 months later. Our first major launch. The venue sparkled with chandeliers and champagne. My brother wore a tuxedo and grinned like a movie star. I wore a simple dress and stood near the back watching the crowd. He took the stage, thanked the team, and then gestured toward me. "And this is our tech girl," he said. "She keeps the lights on." The crowd clapped politely. I smiled, but inside something shifted. Later, I overheard him telling a reporter, "She's just helping out. I handle the big stuff." That night, I sat in my car for an hour before driving home. I stared at the dashboard, replaying his words. Just helping out. I had built the architecture, negotiated the funding, and written every line of code. But to him I was background noise. Useful but invisible. I didn't confront him. I didn't cry. I just changed. I stopped asking for credit. I started making decisions. Quietly, efficiently. I hired people who understood the systems. I signed deals he didn't even know existed. I built layers of infrastructure he couldn't navigate. He thought he was the king. But I was the architect. One afternoon he barged into my office, frustrated. Why wasn't I looped into the new server migration? I looked up from my screen. "Because you don't understand the system." He blinked. "I'm the CEO." I nodded. "And I'm the owner." He didn't respond. He just walked out, the door clicking shut behind him. I learned to wield power quietly. No speeches. No declarations. Just control. I made sure every contract, every deal, every system ran through me. He kept smiling for cameras. I kept building the empire. There was a moment, small, almost forgettable, that still lingers. A junior developer came to me nervous. I just wanted to say, thank you. You're the reason I joined Atlas. I smiled. Why me? He shrugged. Because you're the only one who actually listens. That meant more than any title. I didn't need applause. I didn't need recognition. I needed truth. And slowly I built a company that reflected that. Quietly, beneath the surface, I shaped Atlas into something real. Something lasting. And while my brother basked in the spotlight, I held the foundation. He never saw it coming. But I did. The morning after the dinner, I didn't wake up to peace. I woke up to chaos. My phone lit up like a warning flare. Emails, texts, missed calls. Investors were panicking. Partners were confused. My brother had tried to contain the fallout, but the damage was already done. The $30 million deal was gone. And with it, the illusion that he was in control. I sat at my kitchen table, sipping tea as the messages poured in. One from his wife stood out, long, overly polite, filled with phrases like misunderstanding and family unity. I didn't respond. She had made her position clear at dinner. Now it was my turn. I had waited years for this moment. I wasn't going to rush it. By noon, an emergency board meeting was scheduled. My brother tried to take charge, sending out a memo filled with urgency and vague reassurances. I didn't reply. I simply showed up. The boardroom was tense. My brother stood at the head of the table trying to project confidence. But his voice cracked. His hands trembled slightly as he shuffled papers. I walked in, calm, composed, a folder tucked under my arm. I didn't sit. I stood. I'd like to begin with ownership clarification, I said. He blinked. This isn't the time. It's exactly the time. I opened the folder and laid out the documents. Shareholder agreements, signatures, timestamps. The room fell silent. One board member leaned forward, scanning the papers. Another adjusted his tie, suddenly uncomfortable. I hold controlling shares, I said. Atlas belongs to me. My brother's face drained of color. He looked around, hoping for backup. None came. The board members glanced at each other, then at me. No one argued. No one defended him. The truth was in black and white. The meeting continued, but the tone had shifted. He was no longer the center. I was. Afterward, I returned to my office. The hallway felt different, quieter, more respectful. A few employees nodded as I passed. One even smiled. I hadn't expected that. I hadn't expected anything really. I just wanted truth. That evening, I received a message from a developer I barely knew. Thank you, it read, for making Atlas feel real again. I stared at it for a long time. Then another message came. And another. People who had watched me work in silence were now speaking up. They had seen me. They had always seen me. One woman, a junior analyst, stopped by my office the next morning. I just wanted to say, she began, you're the reason I stayed. I blinked. Stayed. She nodded. I was going to leave. I didn't feel heard. But then I saw how you handled the migration last quarter. You didn't ask for credit. You just fixed it. That meant something. I thanked her and she left. But her words stayed. The reckoning wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It was quiet, steady, and undeniable. My brother tried to recover, tried to reclaim his place. But the foundation had shifted. The people who mattered, the ones who built Atlas from the ground up, had chosen their leader. And it wasn't him. A week later he came to my office. No appointment. No assistant. Just him. He looked tired. Not just physically but emotionally. Like someone who had finally run out of excuses. You could have told me, he said. I nodded. You could have seen me. He sat down across from me, the leather chair creaking under his weight. We didn't fight. We didn't cry. We just sat there, two people who had built something together, and broken it apart. I didn't mean to shut you out, he said quietly. I know, I replied. But you did. He looked down, then back up. What happens now? I lead, I said. You can stay. But things will be different. He nodded slowly. I understand. It wasn't closure. Not exactly. But it was something. In the weeks that followed, I began the rebranding. Not just logos and colors, but culture. I met with every department, listened to every concern, and made changes that mattered. I hired more women. I mentored young founders. I created spaces where people felt safe to speak. One afternoon I walked past the break room and saw a group of interns laughing over a whiteboard sketch. They were brainstorming, collaborating, dreaming. It reminded me of the garage. Of noodles and coffee and hope. I smiled and kept walking. I didn't seek revenge. I didn't seek applause. I sought recognition. And peace. I implemented a new policy. Every employee, regardless of title, would have a voice in quarterly reviews. No more top-down decisions. No more silencing. Atlas would be built on respect. A senior engineer approached me one day. "I've been here since the beginning," he said. "And this is the first time I feel proud to say that." That meant more than any headline. I didn't need interviews. I didn't need spotlights. I just needed truth. And finally I had it. Atlas wasn't just a company anymore. It was a reflection of everything I had fought for, quietly, patiently, relentlessly. And as I stood in the new conference room, sunlight pouring through the windows, I realized something. This wasn't the end. It was the beginning.